stories. Hello and welcome to Coffinbrood. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let's see if we can get 500 likes on this video and 2,000 views. I met this guy named Brad while I was in college. Brad was your average run-of-the-mill frat boy. He liked to party, he liked to drink, and he liked to do drugs. His drug of choice was Molly and fentanyl. Him and his other frat buddies would have parties every week, and at the parties there would be tons of fentanyl, heroin, and Molly. Brad got caught one night after an underage girl went to one of their parties and passed out, and Brad and his three friends, Mike, Chad, and Andy, recorded themselves raping her and posting it on the deep web. Neither Brad, Chad, or Andy were convicted of any crime because they all wore masks, and there was no way to actually identify either of them. Brad claimed that he had nothing to do with the rape, but Brad, Chad, and Andy admitted to possessing and buying and selling narcotics around college. Brad was mostly computer illiterate. Brad could operate his iPhone like a pro, but he barely knew his way around a laptop. Andy and Chad were also not very smart when it came to computers, but could do basic shit like surf the internet and use Facebook, etc. on their phones. Andy suggested that the real person of interest was this computer wizard by the name of Franklin, more commonly known as Frankie. Frankie was a short, scrawny, pasty white kid with glasses that played a lot of Elder Scrolls Online and World of Warcraft. Jerry was hanging out with Frankie when the FBI showed up at his mom's house and were banging on the door. They questioned Jerry and asked Jerry where he was on the night of September 14th, and Jerry explained to them that he doesn't attend college and never had any desire to go to college. Jerry was a Jewish kid from New York. His family had moved to a nearby town with him. Frankie met Jerry when he was 14 years old. Jerry dated Frankie's sister, but they broke up 2 years ago. The FBI asked Frankie about the video and took him down to the local police station and questioned him about his computer knowledge and asked him if he'd ever visited the deep web. Frankie said that he had never visited the deep web, but he understood what the deep web was and understood how to set up a clandestine operation, and that he was majoring in computer science and cybersecurity. The FBI didn't believe that Frankie could possibly be the one that set up the live feed, and they even checked his hard drive and didn't find anything too suspicious, though they did question him about some of his fapping choices. Frankie did have some questionable shit on his computer, such as hentai. Hentai is anime or manga pornography, a loan word from Japanese. Does not describe a genre of medium, but rather an abnormal sexual desire or act. In addition to anime and manga, hentai works exist in a variety of media, including artwork and video games. The development of hentai has been influenced by Japanese cultural and historical attitudes towards sexuality. Frankie explained the laws concerning hentai to the agents. The agents let Frankie go. The next day at school, while Frankie was in the restroom taking a piss, he was confronted by Brad, Chad, and Andy, and they interrogated Frankie about what he told the police. And Frankie explained that he did not tell them anything and that he didn't know or want to know anything about what they had done to that girl. Brad and Chad told Frankie that they wanted his help with producing methamphetamine. Frankie explained that he wasn't a fucking chemist or a pharmacologist. Brad demanded that Frankie get them in contact with someone that was. Look here, nerd, you better fucking get one of your little faggot friends that knows about this shit to fucking help, or you and that pussy Jerry are going to fucking die, Chad demanded. Please, Jerry doesn't have anything to do with this. Jerry doesn't even go to school here, Frankie begged. Andy then chimed in while holding a 9 to Frankie's skull. Listen up, pussy. Do what you're told, and we'll pay your bitch ass, or fucking die right here. I don't give a fuck about the police. I will fucking splatter your brains all over the bathroom wall. Frankie was released. As he hurried out of the bathroom with tears in his eyes and piss in his pants from fear of dying, Brad, Chad, and Andy laughed hysterically like it was the funniest fucking shit in the world. Frankie went and talked to his friend Nicholas, who went by the nickname Nicky. Frankie told Nicky what the trio wanted. Nicky refused and protested and even threatened to call the cops. Frankie, scared to death for the safety of his friend Jerry, he smashed a glass soda bottle that was sitting on the counter over Nicky's head, and then called Brad and told them that he'd talked to Nicky, but Nicky wasn't complying. So he smashed a bottle over his head and told Brad that they should come by and decide how to handle the situation. Chad and Andy came by and loaded an unconscious Nicky into their SUV and drove out to the country. Nicky awoke and Brad explained to Nicky that he was going to produce methamphetamine and fentanyl regardless if he wanted to or not. And if he didn't, then they were going to kill him. Nicky tried to escape and Chad shot him in the back 47 times with a semi-automatic .40 caliber Smith & Wesson carbine rifle. Chad and Andy stalked the girl they assaulted by walking around the block repeatedly to see in the window of the hair shop where she went. After Andy was convinced that she hadn't gone to the police, they stalked another female. They repeatedly entered her cafe and lurked around. Chad stole a cinnamon roll. An argument began because the woman told Chad she wouldn't call the cops if he promised to leave and never come back. Chad promised to leave her alone. At about 10 p.m., the girl's father confronted a man who was acting suspiciously. The man had been seen driving around a slow speed. He had sex toys and server equipment in the back of his car and was seen putting something into the dumpster. Police stopped the suspect that night and impounded his car for registration violation, but the police were unable to make a connection between him and the girl that was sexually assaulted. Authorities later found out that the man had been charged and acquitted of 2 counts of sexually abusing 2 children in 2013. I didn't tell my parents because I was scared that my dad would get upset and not allow me to go back to college. I didn't want to transfer because all of my friends were at my current college. I felt bad and questioned whether I was wrong for riding around in the car with a group of friends. My friends and I were in a car and we were going to McDonald's. There were 4 of us, all female. It was something we did all the time, just go out and get food. We were coming back through the neighborhood one day and all of a sudden we saw the police. When we were leaving McDonald's, they were following us, closed in and stopped us. But when they stopped us, it was all guns drawn at us. They told us to put our hands out the window. They were screaming. They didn't give us a reason why we were getting pulled over. I can recall clearly I brought my friends from school to visit my neighborhood and show them my cool side. My friends from school were excited because it would be a new experience for them. My ego skyrocketed because I wanted to show my friends that hanging out with me was the best thing that ever happened to them. But now I feel like I made a horrible mistake. I believed that in order to keep my friends, I had to be the best friend, convinced they wouldn't stick around otherwise. Friends were allowed to be unreliable and make mistakes, but I didn't allow myself that kind of flexibility. The 2 cops forced us into a white SUV. It was a civilian car. In fact, I noticed it was none other than fucking Brad. Right then it dawned on me. The 2 police officers were not officers at all. It was Chad and Andy. I was afraid my friends were going to be mad at me for putting them in danger, but they were surprisingly not angry, just scared. Throughout the entire ride, they supported me, helped me, and motivated me to reach my goals in school no matter what happened. It was stressful. We'd passed the superficial barrier of parties and game nights and began opening up about actual issues going on in our lives. The SUV stopped, and Brad, Chad, and Andy opened the driver's side rear passenger door, pistol in hand, and demanded that we go inside the warehouse and not make a sound. Very few victims are ever abducted by strangers. The likelihood of a stranger abduction has remained consistently low over the past 30 years. Despite the fact parental fear of these occurrences has increased, Brad was definitely no stranger to me. Brad was well known at school, and he was very popular. I wasn't familiar with Chad or Andy, but my friends knew them pretty well. One of my friends was taken into another room, and the camera was then turned on, and all I could see was the on-air sign lit up. She was questioned about her hobbies and her interests, then brutally beaten for 2 days. But on the third day, Brad made Chad and Andy leave the room, and then he raped her. Sometime later, Chad and Andy came back and raped her as well, saying to her, "If you see your filthy friends again, don't forget to tell them what is in store for them as well." Then they kicked and punched her repeatedly. All of this playing out on Brad's laptop as he monitored the website and occasionally got up to smoke crack and shoot fentanyl. Another week passed without undergoing anything. After this, another friend was escorted to another room. They set her up in front of a camera and she told her story to her mother. They later persuaded her to tell her mother everything. Thus, as soon as contact was established with her mother, she confessed her disloyalty to her mother and her drug addiction, and then they brutally raped her and shot her in the face. When it came my turn, and they were planning on raping me, that's when the FBI had stormed the warehouse and shot and killed Andy and arrested Chad and Brad. This happened when I was 6 years old. I was found teetering near the edge of a balcony. 2 officers tried to get me to come inside, but I refused to come inside. The 2 officers asked me where my mother was, and I told them that I did not know. It turns out that my mother was in lockup for shoplifting while on probation. Another officer explained the reason she left her daughter home alone was because it wasn't safe to leave her with her husband. My mom's husband, Kyle, was questioned by detectives. It was revealed that he is sexually abusive towards Heather. In order to charge him with domestic violence, detectives tricked Kyle into confessing that he raped Heather. But Gary believes that it's legal because they are married. Heather is taken to her therapist, Dr. Kahn, where Heather reveals memories of being sexually abused as young as 14 years old, but she can't remember anything beyond that. One detective comes up with an idea to jog Heather's memory. Detectives obtain childhood photos from Heather's mother and discover inappropriate images of Heather when she was a little girl. The photos are run past the FBI. It is revealed that Heather is a girl called Shameless Heather, whose pictures and videos were popular with online pedophiles. The district attorney says that Heather must identify herself as Shameless Heather to bring charges against Gary for distribution and production of child pornography. Heather is scared and confused and begins to cry and begs officers to not make her do it. Heather does not want to confess, though deep down in her heart she knows that it will never end if she doesn't take a stand and do the right thing. Dr. Kahn comforts Heather as she cries on his shoulder for nearly 2 hours. Heather wants to leave the station and get food, quote unquote, but detectives are already aware of her heroin addiction that she developed as a result of the abuse that she endured. The detectives inform her that if she leaves the station, that they will have to close the case and Gary will get away with his crimes. When detectives show Heather the photos, she shuts down. Later on, Heather bursts into tears again and offers sexual favors to Dr. Kahn. Heather is then taken to a private facility to help her recover. Heather later testifies at a hearing where a man was pleading guilty to possessing an obscene image of a child. The defendant apologizes for his actions and pays $20,000 in restitution. Detectives show Heather more cases from past and present that could result in more restitution, but Heather refuses to testify in any more cases. Later, detectives are able to convince a millionaire who shared Heather's photos to pay $4 million in restitution. Heather accepts the money and is able to get custody of me back.